Thanks for choosing this podcast. This is Coming Out Stories with me, Emma Goldswell. It's brought to you by What Goes On Media, and we bring you inspiring LGBTQ+ stories every fortnight. We're currently looking for sponsors for the podcast so we can keep sharing these stories. More on that at the end of this episode, so please keep listening. You're about to meet Jennie, who's originally from Canada but now lives in Cheshire in England. She came out slightly later in life, and discovering her sexuality led to a lot of changes. A marriage, a new role as a mum, and even a new career. I began by asking how she identified.
So I'm female, a woman, for sure, and I'm married to a woman, so I would identify, I suppose, as a lesbian.
Well, you say suppose. I mean, has it been a bit of a journey for you? When did you sort of think, oh, I might be attracted to my own gender and I might be gay?
For me, it was very much later in life. It was probably my late 20s. You know, I had quite a sheltered upbringing as a child. I come from a great family, really loving and close, also open, but we grew up in a suburb, predominantly white, predominantly heteronormative. Mm-hmm. Even divorce wasn't really, a big thing where I grew up. Yeah. In Canada, as you can tell from the accent.
Yes, I was going to say, we're not in Cheshire. Well, you're in Cheshire now, but that's where you live, but you're not in Cheshire where you grew up. So in Canada, growing up in what decade predominantly?
So I am 36 now. So it was, late 80s, 90s. I would say probably all through the 90s was growing up for me. And, I wasn't really exposed to various different sexualities. And of course, at that time, there was really only one gender, or two genders, sorry.
One for you.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, it was, I think, moving away from where I grew up. So I moved away later in life to London, UK. And I think just getting away from everybody that I knew and the career that I started and just my overall life kind of gave me a new lease on life and the courage and the, freedom, I guess, to explore my sexuality. And, I suppose there must have been someone that kind of, sparked something in me that, made me look at women differently. But oddly, I can't really put my finger on an exact moment or an exact time. It was just more, I was on the dating apps and I thought, I'm going to just flick it to just women and start exploring that. And I did. And I was like, okay, this is definitely for me.
That's quite a big decision to make though, isn't it? It's like, right, I'm lonely. I'm going to go and find myself a partner. Here I am looking for men, presumably going on dates with men.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. So they didn't go well then.
Yeah, it just, I think there was just always something missing for me. And as I started to grow and develop and become more of myself, I just, started to really get a clearer understanding of who I was and what my sexuality was. And, I think it was a blessing for me anyways. Everyone's different, that it happened later on in life, because it was for me very definitive. This is absolutely the path that I want to take and who I am. And this is actually bringing myself, my whole self full circle.
And presumably, were you dating boys at high school then? And it was just
absolutely, yeah,
as a normal straight girl, I guess. Yeah,
exactly. It's so funny, Emma. Like when I think back and I speak to other lesbians and other gay men and whatnot, that they all said they knew when they were younger. And I don't know. That just wasn't. It's just not my story. It's not how I, developed into my sexuality. Looking back, hindsight's 2020. I can certainly see that there were aspects that were missing for me. But yeah, it wasn't, there in bright lights, gay. It was,
it wasn't there. And presumably no one, because sadly, a lot of this podcast, sometimes I talk to people who have been the victims of bullying at school and high school, but I'm guessing that wasn't something that you experienced at all, was it? No one you weren't exhibiting signs of being a lesbian or gay or even questioning. And so nobody was attacking you for it.
No, exactly. I had a great kind of upbringing and my teenage years were, for the most part, wonderful and healthy. And no, I didn't, because I wasn't a gay teenager, I didn't face any of that.
And it sounds like you didn't even know any other gay people, and it was quite a sheltered upbringing.
Yeah, I went to a Catholic school. Obviously, there was lots of gay people, I'm sure, who were there
Mm,
with me.
mhm.
And now when with the joys of Facebook and social media, I can look back and see a lot of the people I did go to high school with who are gay. And it's just a shame that it wasn't really an environment that encouraged children and teenagers to feel comfortable with who they are enough to come out and to live exactly as they should have been living. But yeah, it just wasn't the environment that I was in.
Yeah, that's interesting because I always think of Canada as being very forward thinking and very liberal and very LGBT friendly, actually.
It is. It is. It's just, I think maybe perhaps the
Mm,
section that I was in, which is
mm.
very much a suburb, Catholic, heteronormative. Like I said, divorce wasn't even a big thing. Not very many of my friends' parents were divorced. So I suppose that even though it wasn't necessarily frowned upon, it wasn't encouraged, if that makes sense.
Okay, but then out there in the big cities and in the wider Canada, it's very very celebrated, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know Justin Trudeau always attends Pride, doesn't he? And
I
is
love
very
him.
gay
Yeah.
friendly. He's one of my favourite world leaders, I have to say.
Yeah, I really enjoy him as well. I think it's a mixed bag in Canada in terms of the opinion on him, but I really like him.
Oh,
Yeah.
I bet there is. One of my secret guilty pleasures, which sounds weird coming from a lesbian, is googling images of him doing yoga. And try it. There's some very impressive moves. I have to say.
I'm sure he's very limber.
He is. He's very strong. Anyway, so let's fast forward to London. So it sounds like being in your 20s and having the experience of dating men in London wasn't great, but it's quite a leap to then suddenly go, well, I'm going to switch this dating app to women as well.
Yeah, and like I said, I can't even remember, the woman that, sparked that in me to think, oh wow, I am actually attracted to her or whatever it was. And that's probably something I should really do some thinking on. But it was just more natural for me. I think I just thought, there's something missing and I think this might be it.
Mm.
So I'm going to explore it. And when I did, it was very much all the pieces kind of came together for
So,
me.
so it went well. You found women on Tinder then, unlike myself. I've
I
never
did
got on with that
actually.
particular dating app.
Oh, well, see, I found my now wife. We just got married on Wednesday. We just got married. Well,
Oh,
well, we actually got married in January with my two-step kids. We just kind of went to the registry office and whatnot, but we had our big wedding
wow.
on Wednesday.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't even realise I was going to be interviewing you so soon after you tying the knot.
Yeah. It was just amazing. Yeah. So I found my wife on Tinder. So it does happen, people.
That's a great advert for them, isn't it?
Right? I was like, we should take stock in them. Yeah.
Did you know she was the one straight off?
I knew that I wanted her after the first date. And I tell the joke because we had our date in London on Madison Rooftop Bar. So if anyone's ever been there, you have to take an elevator up to the top. And so I was kind of waiting, and the elevator's door opened and kind of this pint-sized little rocker chick kind of walked out. And I just thought, oh God, I'm fucked here. This is this is going to be a problem, a good problem, but a problem nonetheless for
Oh,
me.
because you fancied her straight away.
Right
Mm.
away. And, we closed down the bar. They had to tell us to leave. And I just knew I wanted her in my life in some capacity. So I didn't know, what form that would take, but I definitely thought this is somebody who is affecting me in a good way. And I want her in my life in some way, shape, or form. And here we are, 6 years later, married, two kids. We just created some embryos as well. I just finished IVF a few months ago.
Wow, it's all
So,
happening for you.
yeah, exactly. So the family is expanding. Yeah. So, who
Oh
knew
my
Tinder 6 years ago?
goodness. And well, that's it. Meeting her completely changed your life because you had, a big career in the city and then you
Mm,
moved to the countryside and totally changed direction in your career because of your sexuality, I guess, in a way.
absolutely. I mean, for me, it was a turning point. Obviously, I dated a lot of women before I met Sam, my now wife. But yeah, meeting her and connecting with her and then meeting her children, who were 1 and 3 at the time, just kind of completely created the unit for me that I didn't know I needed. But, the second we were all together, it was like, I can't imagine my life without us all being together. So yeah, that kind of sparked the move up north.
And so she had had children with a previous female partner, but had custody of the kids.
Yeah, so they got divorced. She was married to a woman. They had these two beautiful children. They got divorced. We share 50-50 custody. And so the kids were based up north, and Sam, my wife, was going back and forth. So I did that for a little bit between London and Cheshire, but it wasn't really, logistically feasible. So I had to kind of make the decision to leave the company I was with and the career that I was kind of carving out for myself. And I moved up north.
Which is a big leap, isn't it? So, and to get involved in a big blended family and to take on someone else's children is a big decision, right?
It is, yeah. And to be honest, I was never that woman who wanted kids and wanted marriage and I was always career focused. For me, it was just always about making money, career progression, traveling, living life for myself. Everybody who knew me was completely shocked that I made the decision. But it was just kind of an inner knowing. Like, I just knew that those kids were, they were a part of me, and that it was important that I helped create a solid foundation and structure in their life. And yeah, I made the decision to move, and it's worked out very well.
Yeah. And was there a moment where you had to ring the parents and go, Mum, Dad, I'm moving to Cheshire and I'm a lesbian? Or was it Mum, Dad, I'm a lesbian, then I'm moving to Cheshire? How did it happen?
Yeah, I never really, again, I don't even have this amazing coming out story per se. I mean, mine was more of, I never felt like my sexuality was something I had to share with the world. It's just something that I lived.
Yep.
And then you either take it or you leave it. I don't feel like I needed to do like a horse and pony show about it.
Like a show and tell. Yeah.
Exactly. Because like I said, marriage and kids was never something that was on the agenda for me. So I never really shared any of the people that I was dating with anyone because no one was serious enough.
Yeah.
Until I found Sam, who was definitely, important and serious enough to make the phone call to my parents, which in the first instance, I think it really kind of shocked them because my sexuality, the fact that I was dating men and women, yada, 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 was not something that I shared with them. So it took them a hot minute to wrap their heads around it. But now they love her way more than they love me.
I'm sure that's not true.
I think they're a bit obsessed. Yeah. So, and then with everybody else, my friends, they were just kind of like, honestly, that seems right. Like, that seems like it was the missing piece for you. So yeah, it was very natural for me.
Relatively easy. But I'm guessing still, just because of pressures of society, that even just planning that phone call and, wanting it to be the right moment and get the right reaction, phoning home when you're the other side of the world as well, must have been quite stressful. It
was terrifying. And I think my parents obviously they had their concerns because Sam had children and what that would mean for me and what, the kind of sacrifices and the compromises I would have to make with my life to be a part of a blended family. They obviously had those concerns. And I think my mom, more than my dad, I think had fears just about what the outside world would think, like you said, because gay, lesbian, the whole LGBTQ community is not something that they've lived or experienced or, connected with. So they were just worried what that would mean for me. And, maybe it's a generational thing for them. So I didn't hold it against them. But yeah, I think they needed some time to wrap their heads around it, which, at the time was a little bit painful, but we're kind of through that now and on the other side.
Yeah. And did they come to your wedding?
Absolutely. Yes. They were front and center. Like I said, they love Sam now. And I think when they look at us and they look at our kids, they can't imagine me being with anybody else. It just makes complete sense. So yeah, they were just thrilled. And it was a really beautiful ceremony, very small. And my sisters came and my aunt and uncle came. My best friend from Toronto came.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really special.
So all your siblings and extended family completely accepted it as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. But they also know me. So, if they had a problem with it, it would be their problem. Yeah. That's how I would feel about it.
Yeah,
so
quite right. And good attitude as well. And good attitude, just go, it's not really anyone's issue, is it really? It's not really anyone's
Well, it's
business. You're just,
business.
yeah, it really
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah. And if I'm happy, if your children are happy, your parents, whoever it is, why does it matter?
No,
You know, I
exactly.
think it's quite an egocentric thing to make it about you.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to talk about your career change then, because this is really
Yeah.
interesting. You've completely turned your life around and had a new career because you met a lesbian that had kids, basically. Tell us what
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. So I was in financial services, super boring in London.
But super lucrative, so I've heard.
Yeah, it was very lucrative. I had a great life and a great career in that regard. Obviously, I wasn't being very fulfilled. And so when I met Sam and the kids and I had to make that hard decision, and that leap to move up north and kind of redirect my career path, when I was around the kids more, it became very, very apparent that there was very little in regards to not just LGBTQ families, but also blended and divorced families.
Mm,
And then add the extra layer, in terms of everything being whitewashed, and there being just a lack of diversity in general in children's literature, television, toys, games, everything my kids were engaging with on a daily basis didn't actually look like their life.
mm.
It was not a reflection of their reality. And to be honest, it's not a reflection of anybody's reality, which I found really jarring. So I just made the decision at first, it was to write some stories for my kids. And that kind of flourished into, well, it won't just be our family that needs this. There's going to be millions of families who need this. So that's kind of how the book, How We Blend Playdate Adventures of Family and Friends, came about. And yeah, now it's I'm available online. I'm going into schools. I'm doing lots of, speaking engagements and helping with the new regulation from the government, which requires there to be lessons on relationships and difference and diversity within the curriculum in the UK, which is wonderful.
Oh, yes, we've come a long way since Section 28, haven't we, in this country?
Absolutely. And hopefully
Mm,
it keeps going in that direction and
hmm.
not the other way. So yeah, it's been, honestly, I feel like the making of me, and has really, helped my own development, writing these characters and these kids in the storybooks, and writing this curriculum has just been an incredible experience for me.
So it's called Howie Blend. That's the main character, right?
Yeah,
There, I was just holding it up now. Howie Blend Playdate Adventures with Family and Friends, and it's six
that's me.
six stories in one book, isn't it?
Yeah, so that was the other thing. Just from a practical point of view, I was getting exhausted every night picking. Oh, it's always a palaver with anyone who has kids knows this. 20 minutes just to pick out a storybook. So I thought I'll write, a book that has a few different stories in it, so you can just pick up the one book and each night read a story. So yeah, there are
Clever.
6 children who are all school friends together. They all come from various different family dynamics. So there's heteronormative but divorced family, adoptive, lesbian, bisexual, a whole kind of, pot of different kinds of families. And then also the children look different. So I wanted to break away from these stereotypes that you see in a lot of children's television and books. The athletic child is the Asian child, and I've put abilities in there as well. So there's a beautiful blonde hair, blue eye boy who's in a wheelchair. So just really mixing it up and actually creating stories and characters that my children, your children, all of our children are engaging with on a daily basis.
It's so important, isn't it? And this is something that we say quite a lot on this podcast. You can't be what you can't see. So the same as
Yeah.
not having LGBT icons out there, just like you say, having other blended families out there, or seeing other people who are disabled who have achieved great things is just so important, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and that's why I say, so it's not like it's not an LGBTQ book. It's not a book about divorced parents. It's a book about all families,
All of them.
because all families and all children within those families are valid, and we need to have more representation of that. And then also, it's not just about my kids seeing that they're reading about other lesbian families or whatnot. It's about maybe the children in schools or just in society in general who come from heteronormative families, but they themselves might be gay, And they just don't know that there are many ways to build and create beautiful families, and that they too can have that when they're older. Or, one of my family members who had fertility issues from actually a really young age, as a teenager, when that happens, understanding that you can adopt and there are various different ways that you can create children outside of.
You certainly do not have to be straight, and you don't even have to be in a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we need just more representation out there for that.
No, we do. And I have to say, this is something that hasn't particularly concerned me until the last year when I became a parent myself. And me and my
Yeah,
girlfriend have
wonderful.
a beautiful 4.5-month-old at the time of speaking,
Oh,
who happens to have Down syndrome. So that was another challenge that we will face. And we have gone out and tried to find. We've got all the traditional books that people give you, but we actually have gone out and tried to find LGBT books or books with different people. And you do have to go and search for it, though. I mean, they are out there, but you do have to go and search for them.
so this was my frustration, Emma, was that it's not mainstream.
No.
You have to dig for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You even have to dig, if you're not white, you've got to search this out.
Mm-hmm.
Why, that should not be. This is not the norm. We are all different and diverse, and that is what's mainstream. So why is that not being represented, right on the shelf at the checkout counter?
Exactly. I mean, supermarkets and airports and all the traditional big shops are very guilty of just pushing all the mainstream stuff, aren't they, really? Which is why.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to give a plug now to independent bookstores, because they do make more of an effort, actually. And I don't know if you've been to Queer Lit in Manchester, which is not that far away from you, but they are a brilliant LGBTQ plus bookstore. And as you go in, the first thing you see on the right-hand side is their children's section.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I reached out to them and I've not heard back about getting my book in there.
Well, I will have a word. Don't worry, I'm connected. No, because they have loads of really great. They haven't got a lot of space, but that might be it. But they do have loads of really great stuff for kids. So
yeah,
I would thoroughly recommend.
It's important.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? I mean, the whole nuclear family and 2.2 children and mummy and daddy is just not, what everyone's experience is anymore.
Absolutely not. And, you think about, kids being in their formative years, and if they're not seeing themselves reflected in their everyday engagement and their play, what are the developmental effects of that in a negative way as they grow up and as they develop their brains and their minds? I think that's a scary thought, and that's not something I wanted for my children. So that's why I decided to create it.
And what sort of reaction have you had to the book then, and all the stories?
Honestly, it's been amazingly positive, to be honest, especially even from the more heteronormative families, because I feel like my generation, your generation, we're just raising more aware and inclusive kids, and we're more worldly in that regard. And, perhaps it's the internet age and yada, yada, yada. There's more interconnectivity. Therefore, we know better, so we do better. But I find that it's not just the LGBTQ family and friends that have been giving, positive feedback. It's been everybody. And there's definitely been an acknowledgement that there's a huge hole in the market for this.
Well, best of luck with the book. It deserves to do very, very well indeed. I wholeheartedly support it. We normally end the podcast with a sort of advice question. I'm just wondering whether I should change the question, because normally it's about advice about coming out, but maybe advice about being an LGBT parent might be quite useful, actually. Because
gosh, I'd have to think about an answer.
Yeah. But there'll be lots of people listening who want to go down that route. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe next year or the year after, and want to understand some of the pitfalls and the difficulties of being an LGBT parent or being part of a blended family. What is some of the advice that you wish that you'd known before becoming a parent?
So I think just even a parent in general. So regardless of your sexuality, I just think one of the main things that we can do for our children is to give them the tools and help them become thinkers rather than telling them what to think. And I think we all make this mistake. We want to see almost little versions of ourselves. And I think that can be quite toxic for children. So yeah, just giving them the space, the tools, and the confidence to become thinkers for themselves rather than telling them what to think.
Yeah, fabulous. And get your book as well, obviously.
Obviously.
And I've just realised, I can't believe I'm interviewing you a few days after your wedding. Why aren't you on honeymoon?
Oh, well, we have the kids and we work schedules and whatnot, but we will, I think before we implant, because obviously our embryos are frozen, we'll do kind of a big trip together and get some alone time before we add to our joyous chaos.
Oh, goodness me. Well, best of luck with that as well, expanding your blended family. I hope it goes.
Thank you so much. And thank you for what you do. This is really important work. And I'm really blessed and happy that you invited me on.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Slightly embarrassed about my Justin Trudeau admission in that interview, but anyway, a big, big thank you to Jennie for sharing her story. And go get her book. She is Jennie Guay, and that's spelled Guay. And her kids' book is called How We Blend, Playdate Adventures with Family and Friends. It's actually 6 stories in one. It's very good. Go and get it. And while you're at the bookstore, you may also want to check out Coming Out Stories by me, Emma Goswell, and Sam Walker. Just saying. So, we've been putting out this podcast at our own expense for 4 years now, but we have got to the stage where we really need to look at getting a sponsor. We really believe in the power of sharing these stories, and we'd love to be able to continue to keep doing that. If you think you could help us, or maybe you've got a contact that you think might be interested in reaching out to listeners across the globe, then please do get in contact. Probably the easiest way to do that is via our website, that is comingoutsstoriespodcast.com. Just click on the Get in Touch link and send us a message. It would be amazing to hear from you. Right, you probably want to hear about the next episode, don't you? You'll be hearing from Andrew, who identifies as queer and non-binary.
I don't wear a dress yet, or I'm not dressing in clothing that would identify me necessarily as society would see it as a woman. But equally, I like to have the options. I just don't like being hemmed into a box. I think I've done that for so many years that it's important to be more free in that respect. So whether I end up doing more stuff than my nails, for me, it's not about that. It's just about options. And, my nails were a really big thing for me because when I was a kid, all my friends were girls and they all had their nails painted. And I remember painting my nails with felt tip to colour them in. And I was told, no, boys don't paint their nails.